Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
My name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
All right. 'Tis the season, Josh. It is time.
It's Oscar time. We've been talking about this like forever. And so finally we get to actually dig in deep to our picks of what we feel like we think will win, each of us, and then who we would vote for if we were voting, if we were esteemed members of the Academy. So, I think that we're going to do kind of the main categories, but I wanted to start off with the international film category, because from all I've read, it seems like, and all I've listened to, and it seems like Parasite is on track to win this Oscar, to win the best international film Oscar. And I think that that's going to be amazing if Parasite wins any Oscars. And I think this one is kind of like right down the middle for Parasite. And we've talked a bunch about them. I have been miserable in my watching of films over the last 2 months. So if any movie that's come out in the last 2 months, it's been really difficult for me to get to. And since we've seen the nominees come out for international film, I actually haven't watched any of them, including Pain and Glory, which I was supposed to get to this week, but I did not see. Did you see Pain and Glory?
Yes, I did.
Okay, cool. Well, at least one of us will be able to speak intelligently on Antonio Banderas and Almodovar and his kind of from what it sounds like, somewhat autobiographical film. But since Parasite's the only film I've seen in this category, and I think that it's a masterpiece. If you want to know my opinions or Paul's opinions on Parasite, you can listen to our, good God, 2 hour long podcast on it. So, but yeah, so that's the one I think that will win. And that is the one that should win, in my opinion.
Yes, I've only seen 2 in this category, but for me, this podcast is going to be very simple. Everything that Parasite is nominated for, I think should win. So let's just get that out of the way.
So I'll cut our podcast in half right there.
Well, I do. I absolutely think everything that Parasite is nominated for, it should win. Production design, director, picture. We'll get to all of that, not to do any spoilers, but I'm not going to sit here and I want to be pleasantly diplomatic about it. But the bottom line is it's the best film of the year, period, for me and for history. And when we look back on it, sure, we should have a category, and I'm sure all these other films. Pain and Glory is a beautifully etched out film with a wonderful performance, and he won the Cannes Film Festival. Antonio Banderas won the Cannes Film Festival Best Actor Award, deservedly so. It's great that he's nominated for the Oscar. It would be super great if he won. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. So international film is going to Parasite, and it's almost so easy to say that's just the way it is, because it is such a perfect film. And yes, our podcast is an hour and 51 minutes, by the way, if you want to be precise.
Yeah.
And that's because I've looked at it on YouTube, because we have over 3,000 views on YouTube, and I'm blown away by that. I don't think it's us per se. I think it's that movie is so intriguing to people that they will listen to anybody talk about it. And I feel the exact same way, because since I've gone to that site and seen our podcast go up in numbers, I've watched all the other ones that come after that. There's an interview with Bong Joon-ho. There's an interview with the whole cast. I mean, and of course they have 140,000 views on those, and 41,000 views and all that other stuff. But it's just the movie of the year. It is the movie of my lifetime. I've said it. I'm going to say it, and I'm going to stick to it. I've seen it twice. It was fascinating to watch it a second time.
Yeah, right.
It was so interesting, because I kept thinking to myself, is the shine going to be off the coin? And I have to say yes and no. There's something about watching a film like that for the first time where you have no idea what's coming. Mm-hmm. So when the old housekeeper rings the doorbell, as an audience member, you have no idea the first time what's getting ready to happen. Already seeing it, what's interesting is what you watch around it. So it was fascinating to watch it a second time, because there were things I noticed that I had never noticed the first time. I never noticed every time Song Gong-ho, the father in Parasite, I never noticed every time something epic started happening, he shut his eyes and started meditating. Do you remember that?
I mean, I haven't seen it in a while.
When the pesticides
Yeah.
Yeah, when the pesticide comes through the window and they're all going,
Oh yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
just shuts his eyes and he does it 4 or 5 times throughout the film.
Mm.
It's fascinating. And I never noticed that in the most epic things that happen, he just calmly shuts down and starts to go into his own place, which is a coping mechanism for people who are not being able to deal.
Well, and I think it probably brings itself. We're having a little mini Parasite podcast, but it kind of brings itself out in strict relief when he's underneath the table and the Kims are talking about him and his smell and that's one of those. You're right. He's kind of shutting himself down, and he's so embarrassed in front of his children that all of this is going on, and yeah, it's that same kind of a feel, I guess. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, it happens. I believe that's the third time that it happens in the film when they're underneath the coffee table,
Mm-hmm.
and it as an audience member having already seen it, you kind of take on that quality where you just become zen about it because you know what's happening and you know what's going to happen, and you kind of have to go to your happy place
Mm-hmm.
because you already know where this is going and you have to hold on tightly. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Parasite, international film. I love that they changed the title, by the way, from foreign language to international film. I love everything about that. I'm happy that they did that. I just think it makes it more inclusive, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
or inclusive. Yeah. I there's something about it just sounds right. So I'm glad they changed it.
So before we move on, I did want to ask this question to you is that, do you feel like with last year and this year?
Now I'm laughing at the fact that we're having a mini Parasite podcast, but it's going to continue. It's going to continue. So that's what I'm laughing at. I'm laughing at myself.
Oh yeah, this is definitely happening. Do you feel like this category, in some ways, at least in the last 2 years, because last year Roma was a quote unquote lock for this Oscar, and this year people are saying Parasite is a quote unquote lock for this Oscar. Do you feel like this is one of those things where a lot of the Academy voters are saying like, well, this is something that needs to be revered, but we can't elevate it to the Best Picture winner? We need to pick something either safer or more traditional, or the voting body skews us into a certain age range that might not be as willing to bestow Best Picture on something that takes risks or something that's more contemplative or something like that. What do you think about that? Do you think this is running the risk of becoming the really, really amazing movie that we can't actually elevate to Best Picture winner?
Well, we're going to talk more about that specific subject when we get to Best Picture, but I will say this. It will be the film that when we look back on 50 years from now, 100 years from now, it will be the movie that should have won if it doesn't win Best Picture. I'm giving away everything. Look at my cards here. I fold. I'm done. Blackjack. I'm done. I mean, I'm done in the best kind of way because I just can't hold back how much I love this movie and how much I am never good at seeing the future. I'm never good at it. I always see a movie for the first time for what I think the director and the actors and the people who put the project together want us to see. You have a great quality of going to a movie and seeing it for what it is, as if you've seen it 3 or 4 times, and you can see things in the first viewing that most people can't see. I'm on the other side of that. I see it as if this is what they wanted me to see, and whether or not it's there or not, and then later on I'll watch it again and I'm like, it starts to fall apart. We've talked about this before. I can see the future when it comes to this movie. It will be the movie that should have if it didn't. So will it be a consolation prize for it to win international featured film? No, it deserves that.
Mm-hmm.
As for whether or not that's going to be something that they give it that award instead of Best Picture, we'll talk about that in just a little bit because I do have some stuff I want to say about that.
Okay. All right. So next we're going to move on to adapted screenplay. So the nominees for adapted screenplay are Taika Waititi for Jojo Rabbit, Greta Gerwig for Little Women, Todd Phillips and Scott Silver for Joker, Anthony McCartan for The Two Popes, and Steven Zaillian for The Irishman. All right, so here's who I think will win. Taika Waititi just won the WGA. So I think it will be Taika Waititi since he won the WGA for Best Adapted Screenplay. And I'm actually okay with that. But I think that Greta Gerwig should win for Little Women. We talked about it in our podcast, I think that it's both of these choices, Taika Waititi, Greta Gerwig, they're writer-directors, and they're bringing their vision to the screen. And I think they both brought a vision that is something that maybe, I would say Little Women is something that, yes, has obviously been made into a movie before, but she's doing something new by changing up the structure of the screenplay, which kind of really hits me right where, I live and breathe, and I love that. And Taika Waititi's taking something that is a more serious novel type story, and putting his spin on it where it's making, trying to get you to feel certain things, feel the depth of the situation that this kid was living in Nazi Germany, and also trying to, elevate it with a sense of levity. So, both difficult tasks, and I think they both did a great job, but I think that Greta Gerwig should win it.
Yeah, I'm in completely agreement with everything you just said. Out of nowhere, all of a sudden, Taika Waititi is winning all of these awards for adapted screenplay. I'm not surprised. I'm happy for him. And I'm still a little bit lost in how you pronounce his first name. I keep hearing, and Scarlett Johansson just said Tycho. And I was like, okay, what is his first name? So if you hear me say it, it's because I'm grappling with trying to say it, and I'm trying to get it right. But I swear she just said on the BAFTAs, Taika Waititi.
It's YTT.
YTT? YTT?
YTT.
YTT. Okay. Yeah, that ain't going to be any easier. But anyway, it's an interesting name, and he's an interesting person, and he has an interesting disposition. And I think that the reason why Jojo Rabbit is an interesting screenplay is because he struck a chord, not necessarily because of the subject matter, but because of the tonal shifts that he does throughout that film. And it's all in screenplay. And that could have fallen apart. It could have fallen on its face. And what he did was brilliant, because it's obviously a rich satire. It's obviously humorous in places, uncomfortable humor in places, but it has such heart. It is filled with such substance. The performances are stunning. We'll get to that later on too. But without it being on the page, those performances wouldn't be what they are. And the whole dancing sequence at the end is still in my heart. I can't get it out of my brain. And that's a screenplay. He wrote that. Mm-hmm. That is something he wrote. But the truth of the matter is, if I had a vote, I would vote for Greta Gerwig, because something about the way she told that story was very modern in its approach to the past, present, and future all at one time. And like I said on the podcast about Little Women, anybody who writes a screenplay where it's infinitely Christmas all the time, I'm good with. And how that kind of transitions from one thing to the next. It's always spring in that movie. It's always winter in that movie. It's always summer in that movie. It's always the same, different seasons throughout the whole entire movie. And I think that's very hard to do. And I know that sounds like a superficial thing to say, but there's not a moment you don't understand where you're at in this place of this film. And we talked about it in the podcast, that scene where she comes down the stairs and she hits the post of the stairs and she jumps, and you immediately know you're not where you thought you were. And you immediately don't want to be where it goes, but you have to because of the way that it's done. So Jojo Rabbit will win. Taika Waititi.
There you go.
That was okay, yeah. Right? If everybody could see me, I have to physically do it. I have to lean into it. But I would vote for Greta Gerwig. So There you go.
Okay. So this next one, Best Original Screenplay, nominees are Noah Baumbach for Marriage Story, Quentin Tarantino for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Bong Joon-ho and Han Jin-won for Parasite, Ryan Johnson for Knives Out, and Sam Mendes and Christy Wilson Carnes for 1917. And I think that Bong Joon-ho and Han Jin-won will win, and I think they should win. So I didn't know that they would win the WGA, but that's a good sign, and I'm gonna keep riding that train. So we talked about Parasite. Chalk one up for Parasite.
Yep.
This is gonna be the most boring podcast ever.
No, it's not. It's just that we don't often 100% are on the same page with stuff like this. So that's why there's so much more energy for other podcasts, because you like one thing, I like another thing. We get to vote for something, and we know something else might win. It's not that. It's just that I don't know how much you can talk about a film over and over again and continue to expect people to listen to your enthusiasm about it.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is it is the most original screenplay. I would venture to say, I want to say so far in my life. And I know that's really out there, but that's how I feel about it. It's how I felt about it. I said it. I believe it.
Yep.
The thing about this is that all of the other screenplays, now I know you just saw 1917, you weren't 100% thrilled with it. I thought it was a masterpiece, and we can talk about it maybe later on. All 5 of these screenplays are impressive. I just saw Knives Out again, and wow.
Yeah.
I mean, any other year. First of all, it needs to be in the Best Picture category.
Yeah.
Why it's not, I don't understand.
Well, you got to get Ford versus Ferrari and Joker in there.
Yeah, but they have 10 slots, so why not fill them up?
I'm joking.
Yeah, I know you are. I went and saw it the other night with my best friend at the Narrow, which is this very old theater in Norfolk. It's one of my favorites. It still has a balcony. Back in the day when I used to go when I was younger, you used to be able to smoke in the balcony. That's how old this theater is. That's how old I am. And it was amazing to me to watch Knives Out again because everything clicked, because everything's right there. Everything Jamie Lee Curtis did, they laughed at. I mean, it's just amazingly well written. Any other year, it would be the movie I would vote for. If Parasite was not in this category, I would vote for it. And I loved Marriage Story and I loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I've seen both twice. I almost saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a third time. So I'm 2.5 into that. And I'm fascinated by it. And before I forget, you know how Quentin Tarantino kind of had a hard time with some critics about Margot Robbie's character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, how they didn't really give her much to do. And I kind of disagree with that. It dawned on me the second time watching that movie. When's the last time you've ever seen a movie where a character is completely happy from beginning, middle, and end and has little to no conflicts, if any, in a film and is genuinely happy she's in the movie? And that's why Margot Robbie is so great in that film. She has nothing to like yell at anybody about, nothing to get sad about, nothing to be, you cheated on me, nothing. She's stunningly happy throughout that film. And I think people don't know how to deal with that. They don't know how to put that in their psyche because usually it's all about conflicts. And there are just line after line in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that is hilarious. I mean, it's just hilarious. So any other year, I would vote for Knives Out, but this year I would vote for Parasite, and Parasite will win.
Amen, brother. All right, so we're going to do Best Supporting Actor, Tom Hanks from Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Joe Pesci from The Irishman, Al Pacino from The Irishman, and Brad Pitt from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So I think that Brad Pitt will win. I mean, he's been raking in awards throughout this award season. And I think that this is a good. Oh, I forgot Anthony Hopkins for The Two Popes for supporting actor, but because I stopped on Brad Pitt and was like, well, he's gonna win, and I think that he should win. I've not seen A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, so I'm not sure about Tom Hanks' performance. I mean, it could be. I'm sure it's great, but just compared to what Joe Pesci and Al Pacino did, I think Joe Pesci is an interesting conversation to have. It's been a while since Joe Pesci's acted, and so bringing him out of retirement to do a Martin Scorsese movie with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro is pretty cool. And he plays a very constrained version of what you would think he would be, and I think he does it very well. He just slips right back into what you would expect a great actor to do. So it's great that he got nominated. But I think that Brad Pitt has a quality that it's hard for people to isolate. I think, at least to maybe articulate. And this is an epitome of his quality. So I think that if you're going to give him an Oscar, this is a great one. I mean, I think he's had better performances probably. Playing Jesse James, he was amazing. And did he get nominated for that?
No, he didn't. What's his name did? Casey Affleck. Casey Affleck was nominated for nominated for supporting actor. Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, there's been. I mean, I love Brad Pitt. He's a Missouri boy, so that's cool too. But yeah, I think that he will win, and I think he should win.
I agree with you again. Yet another long and boring podcast shortened to 21 minutes.
There we go. All right.
Nobody has to worry about or an hour and 51 minutes, like Parasite. I just wanted to mention it again.
There you go. You got to get Parasite in
the
every
supporting actor
single
category.
Yeah, every single. Well, that is an interesting thing we could talk about.
I could figure it in. If you wanted to figure it in, I could figure it in. But I said when we did the nomination show, I shouldn't talk about who didn't get nominated, because they didn't. So we can talk about years from now, months from now, who we thought should be in there. But these are the 5 nominees, and they're all interesting performance. Tom Hanks does it. I mean, he really does convince you he is who he says he is. Al Pacino is just my favorite thing in The Irishman. I thought Anthony Hopkins was interesting in The Two Popes, but I'll be honest with you. The truth of the matter is that when I saw that movie, I didn't know it was garnishing such acclaim. And when I saw it, I was like, that's very interesting. That story's interesting. I was raised Catholic. I'm fascinated by a pope who retires. Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated by the new pope. I like the new pope. And, I'm not a follower of the Catholic religion anymore, but I like what the new pope has to say. And I like the whole idea of how that all broke down. And I grew up watching the cloud of white smoke come up instead of gray smoke, or black, I guess, but it's gray.
When you say the new pope, do you mean the HBO show, or do you mean the actual new pope?
The actual new pope.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Well,
that's
based on
Jude
this.
Law's in a show called The New Pope. So that's what confused me.
Yeah, and his little white Speedo, which is disturbing as all get
yeah,
up.
Okay.
But
all right.
Because he's a pope. Other than that, it's okay with me. No, I'm saying the pope that is the pope now.
Yeah.
And for the life of me, I can't think of his name. He's a cool guy. I like what he stands for, and I like what he's said so far. But I would have never guessed that this was going to garnish Anthony Hopkins his umpteenth Oscar nomination after 2 decades, or however long it's been. Because we talked about that on the nomination show. A lot of these people haven't been nominated. I think Joe Pesci hasn't been nominated in 29 years. Mm-hmm. So yes, everyone on this list is worthy of the praise. And I was getting ready to say Joe Pesci is very silent, and I loved that. Somebody pointed out to me, actually, Chad Goodman, the guy who does our music for the podcast, he pointed out, how many times you've ever seen Joe Pesci so silent in a movie? Normally he's la, and that's exactly what we talked about when we talked about The Irishman. And to me, silence is so hard to pull off, and there's such a subtlety to his performance. And when he looks across that dance floor at the young Anna Paquin, it's unnerving. It's so unnerving. It's like you see into his soul. So good for all of them, but there is infinite amount of times in Once Upon a Time in America, or Hollywood, sorry, that Brad Pitt just says something, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm wondering if anybody could have said it like that. And if I had read that script and or auditioned for it, would I have ever interpreted it that way? And the answer is no. And here, he's got a quality, and I hear what you're saying about you think he's been better in other things. I don't know if I'm definitely in that category of thinking. There is an intangible quality to his performance in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that I think only him in that movie at this time could have done it. Is tonight going to be the night? Why not? The way he does it is, it's a poor imitation. Forgive me. But the second time I saw it, I was like, damn, because I thought he was great the first time, but I didn't feel that intangible thing that he has, and he has it. So he deserves an acting Oscar nomination. I'm completely 100% behind him. He will win, and I would vote for him.
All right, great. Best Supporting Actress, Kathy Bates for Richard Jewell, Scarlett Johansson for Jojo Rabbit, Laura Dern for Marriage Story, Florence Pugh for Little Women, and Margot Robbie for Bombshell. Okay, I think that Laura Dern will win because she's won a bunch of other stuff. But I would love to see Florence Pugh win this. I think that Florence Pugh has so much more to do, in her career. And I think that Scarlett Johansson, I haven't seen Richard Jewell, but I think Scarlett Johansson from Jojo Rabbit would be, I'm amazed that she'd never been nominated for an Academy Award before this year, and now she's got 2. But I think that there's certain scenes in there where you can't, at least for me, like it's hard for me to see another actress in that role. And so that I think is something that needs to be supported and needs to be celebrated. So I've got like little highlighter things on my list here, and I've got Laura Dern in green for who will win, and I've got both Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh in yellow, which means like who I would want to win. So I don't know. I think both of them will be in roles in the future that they will probably win Academy Awards for, but I'm glad they're both on this list now in this time.
I think it's 100% legitimate that you have them both down because one, you've always said that you were shocked that Scarlett Johansson hasn't had an Oscar nomination up to this point. You were blown away by it. You also said that she could be nominated twice this year, and it's the first time I heard it. I had never heard that yet, and then all of a sudden it started to happen. I'm not saying you did it, but I'm saying that it seems to have synced up to where that's the first time I heard it. And I'm listening because I'm always listening to this conversation. And I thought, well, that's interesting, but you do have a thing for Scarlett Johansson. So I thought, is this a thing? And I was like, no, Josh is not that guy. He can separate something that he thinks is good quality work and a beautiful woman. But you do have a thing, and you do have a thing with Florence Pugh. But here's the thing about that. They're both quality actresses putting in tremendous performances this year. Midsommar, Marriage Story, Jojo Rabbit.
Have you seen Fighting with My Family?
No, not yet. I will though.
Yeah, you need to seek it out. It's a great movie. I really like that movie.
And then in a couple of months, you get your cherry on top of the sundae because they're going to be in a movie together, playing sisters. It's gonna be awesome. So yeah, so there it is. So here's the thing: Laura Dern will win. It is her time. And I'm not 100% sure why this caught fire, why her performance caught fire. But the second time I saw Marriage Story, I thought to myself, why did I like her so much the first time I saw this movie? She's kind of awful. She's kind of not, she's a divorce lawyer. She's got that great speech, but that's the word on the page. She does pull it off. But at the end of the film, even when she says, spoiler for Marriage Story, even when she says, just because I wanted to get that extra 5% because I just didn't want it to be even. She's drinking a little bit of champagne or wine and she's sitting on Scarlett Johansson's counter and you still like her. Even though you're like, dude, did you not pick up on the signs that this couple wanted to do this in an even Steven kind of way? Why are you trying to prove? Now, granted, she makes a good point about systematic sexism throughout that film. And so, yes, sometimes you have to tip the scales in order to make them even. But in the end, everything she did in that film is ingrained in my head. Everything that she did, I can remember. She's infinitely watchable. She's amazing in everything that she does. And she has that same intangible quality that Brad Pitt has. So it's not a cry, yell, scream, have an emotional breakdown, Oscar-winning performance, but it is one of those performances when they're nominated and they don't win, we talk about, wow, wouldn't it be nice for just the straight guy to win the Oscar? Just the guy who was so infinitely believable, and in this case, female. Don't we just want the woman who plays the straight character to win the Oscar because she was infinitely believable? Isn't that what we always talk about? And then here it is. And so I have to say Laura Dern will win. And this is a hard one for me because Margot Robbie did what she did in that movie, and I thought it was interesting to see. Kathy Bates was and is always great. She's a heartbreaker in that movie. Scarlett Johansson in Jojo Rabbit. First of all, if she can do such a great German accent, why is she not doing a Russian accent in Black Widow? I hope in this new movie, there's flashbacks where she has the Russian accent. Mm-hmm. I think the idea is that she's so good at what she does that she can get rid of her Russian accent, and that's why she's such a great spy or, that kind of thing as Black Widow. But my heart is with Florence Pugh. So Laura Dern will win, but I would vote for Florence Pugh.
Nice.
Here's why. I just solidified it today too. She's a heartbreaker in that movie when she's talking about her little small ankles and her nice feet and how she never twists her ankles and she's having that little emotional breakdown and she just wants some help. It's so adorable and so sweet, but at the same time, you completely understand where she's coming from. Hard to pull off. And then she switches in that movie to, I know what I have to do. I know I'm going to marry this guy who has money because that's what I need to do. It switches. And then later on, it switches back to something completely different. It's very layered. And I'm also in love with that movie. So Laura Dern will win. I would vote for Florence Pugh.
All right. That's awesome. Best actor nominees are Jonathan Pryce for The Two Popes, Adam Driver for Marriage Story, Leonardo DiCaprio for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Antonio Banderas for Pain and Glory, Joaquin Phoenix for Joker. Joaquin Phoenix will win. He's won a bunch of different things. I am not holding my issues with Joker against Joaquin Phoenix as an actor. I think that he puts in a great performance. I think Leonardo DiCaprio does his Quentin Tarantino thing in Quentin Tarantino's movie. He's able to be funny and outlandish and emotionally over the top. And so I respect that. I haven't seen it. I really did want to see Pain and Glory because I really did want to come at this, from an even standpoint and be able to evaluate this, because Antonio Banderas may put in the most amazing performance of his career, and I don't know about it right now, which I feel really bad about, but I've been moving and it's been insane. So I think I'm okay with Joaquin Phoenix winning the best actor. I don't really know how to process Adam Driver. He does something. He does different things as an actor, and it's hard to compare him to other actors for me. So I think that he always adds something new in a performance that I don't expect. Whether it's, I don't know if it's his line readings or his mannerisms or just his physical presence, but there's something about his performances that are always novel to me. So, which is interesting because something that's novel is obviously something that's not, it's out of the ordinary. But how can an actor consistently be out of the ordinary? I don't know. It's kind of an amazing feat. So I also think that Adam Driver is going to have a bunch more. He's going to have a great career and he's going to have a lot of great opportunities. That doesn't mean he shouldn't win an Academy Award this year. It just means that I'm excited to see what he will win an Academy Award for in the future. And I think it might be more interesting or more difficult than Marriage Story, which is a very difficult movie.
Okay, of course, Joaquin Phoenix will win, and I'm good with it. I'm resolved about it. I think we were blown away by his performance. You and I were. We weren't blown away by the movie. And like you said, that's not necessarily, I don't want to say his fault because, it's movies. So it's not like fault. There's no fault. Somebody didn't do anything wrong. So they can't be blamed for something when it's just a movie and a storytelling process. I think it's a character study that we will look at for years to come. I find it fascinating that, DC has had a hard time getting off the ground, but they're going to have 2 Academy Award winners for the same role. With all due respect to Marvel, and anybody who's listened to any of our podcasts know I'm in love with Marvel films. This is not a diss on Marvel, but Marvel doesn't have 2 Academy Award winners, especially for the same character, or seemingly the same character. We'll leave it at that. That's more woo for DC than it is a diss on Marvel. Marvel does have the mantle of having the first picture. That's a comic book film to be nominated. Last year, Black Panther, deservedly so. Mm-hmm. So Joaquin Phoenix will win. As for Jonathan Pryce, by the way, I looked it up. He's playing Pope Francis. That's the dude. Pope Francis is the dude. He's the latest Pope, not the new Pope, the latest Pope. And Anthony Hopkins is playing Pope Benedict. And Pope Benedict retired, which hasn't happened since like 796 or something. Yeah,
it's the second time in the history of the Catholic Church that happened.
Yeah, and it was like 792 AD.
Yeah.
So like it doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. So that's what I was trying to express in that scenario. And as a Catholic who was brought up as Catholic, or a person who's brought up as a Catholic and might not be there anymore. I didn't want any disrespect to all my Catholic people that I couldn't remember those people's names. I'm happy for Jonathan Pryce. How he is not an Academy Award nominee up to this point, even all the way back to Glenn Ross, he could have easily been nominated for Best Supporting. That's him. Like, when I think about, that's the same guy that was in Evita. What? Like, I just can't see it. Antonio Banderas. Oh my gosh. There are 2 scenes in that movie. I've said this before, but if I got a split second on screen to do what he did, I would feel so satisfied going into whatever happens next after this life, because there are 2 scenes in that movie that are masterful. It's really well done. He won the Cannes Film Festival Award. I'm happy he's nominated. I'm also happy that we might get to see him more, and he might get better choices now because he's now nominated. And he has a very prestigious award under his belt. Leonardo DiCaprio, he's so great in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I can't say enough about him. Any other year, it would be his Oscar. He would be winning his 2nd Oscar. Adam Driver, you're 100% right. I don't know if it's the line reading. I don't know if it's his choices. He's a lot like Brad Pitt in that they do the opposite of what you're expecting them to do. They do the polar opposite. And Adam Driver and Brad Pitt, but Adam Driver in particular, he reminds me of that guy that, like, and I mean, maybe you don't really know this kind of experience, but you're in a audition and you're reading and you're doing really well and you're doing really well and you're doing really well and you're thinking, wow, this is going really good. And then you kind of like read and you're like, oh no, that sucked. Oh no, but that was good. And then Adam Driver walks in the door and the first syllable out of his mouth, you're like, okay, not only is he getting the part, but he deserves it. And you know what? I did well. I'm happy for myself, but that is the guy. So Joaquin Phoenix will win. Adam Driver is who I would vote for. And I said that moment 1 for Marriage Story.
There you go. Yeah.
And I said, what I texted you was, Adam Driver, if he wins the Oscar, he will deserve it. Mm-hmm. So he's got my vote this year.
Yeah. All right, so Best Actress, we've got Scarlett Johansson for Marriage Story, Cynthia Erivo for Harriet, Charlize Theron for Bombshell, Saoirse Ronan for Little Women, and Renee Zellweger for Judy. So Renee Zellweger will win for Judy. I think at this point, I am now not watching Judy out of protest, because I'm sure it's an amazing performance, but I have no desire to see it. And there's something about like everyone just giving up on this kind of race for no reason, I guess, and saying Renee Zellweger will win this. I think that Saoirse Ronan should win for Little Women, because I think that, I mean, I love Scarlett Johansson, but I think if I'm going to give Scarlett Johansson an Oscar this year, and I have the option of giving her supporting actress or actress, I would give her the supporting actress Oscar for Jojo Rabbit. And it's hard for me. Marriage Story is not a movie that is like in my wheelhouse, because it's very play-like and it's very actory and it's very scene specific, I guess. It is a collection of scenes, whereas the films that I like are either high concept films or world building films, or structurally complex films, or at least films that have some sort of like a technical, I don't want to say gimmick because that's reduction, but have some sort of like something that for me to sink my teeth into. And Marriage Story, I respected it, and I understand the difficulty primarily from doing this podcast with you, understanding what actors have to go through to perform these roles, and also appreciating seeing people live lives on screen and reflecting on that in my own life. And that's something that I didn't necessarily do before we did the podcast. So that's awesome that I've learned how to do that through this process. So that's great. Thank you for that. But I think that Saoirse Ronan in Little Women is a force of nature, and that film is a force of nature, and Greta Gerwig is a force of nature, and she is Greta Gerwig's proxy throughout this process. And I think that should be rewarded. Has she gotten? Yeah, she got nominated. Has she won?
Saoirse Ronan? No.
Yeah, she's been nominated like 5 times, right?
4 times under the age of 25.
Good God.
She's up there with Jennifer Lawrence and Kate Winslet, who were both nominated 4 or 5 times under the age of 25 or 30. I think Kate was nominated under five or 6 times, 5 times under the age of 30. And then both Jennifer Lawrence and Kate Winslet have won and have been nominated since, which always seems like some kind of, clinch. Like it seems like once you win an Oscar and then you get nominated again later on, it seems to be like that's more of a validation of your win. I don't know why. It just feels that way. Okay, so to start with the Renee Zellweger thing, I definitely don't feel the energy that people are just giving up and just voting for her because that's who's won everything else. She deserves it. She will win it. Her Somewhere Over the Rainbow at the end that she sings herself as Judy is devastating. The movie's wonky. It's not even at all. It has a lot of issues. I say you should see it for the performance, but that's not who you are as a person. That's not what attracts you to movies. And I understand that and respect that. But if you had said to me, hey, the performances are a little wonky in this movie. I'm not exactly sure they're great, but this movie has something about it that you need to see technically. I would step out of my comfort zone and see that movie. So I say try and think about it again. Maybe one night you and Steph can rent it and you're not going to like the movie. You're not going to like the movie.
Thanks.
I can already tell you're not. You're just not. Well, I'm not saying it's because any other reason other than it's just not structurally sound. The movies, you will instantaneously see the flaws, but she is so believable and so on point that you cannot deny that this is what has flown her in this whole entire time. Because this movie came out a while ago and people were talking about it a while ago. And I thought she was going to lose momentum, especially with these other performances out there. Awkwafina from The Farewell, just to name one who's not on this list. Okay, so Cynthia Erivo, she's wonderful in the movie. The movie is not 100% solid. I think she might win Best Song, so that'll be great for her because she's nominated for Best Original Song and Best Actress, and the song is beautiful. And we're going to see her sing it, and she's British, so it's kind of hard to see a British woman in this role. For some reason, you can't. She just is who people will now see as Harriet Tubman, and it's an important story to tell, and she knocks it out of the park, and her performance helps you get through the movie. The truth of the matter is, without her performance, I would have picked up my phone a couple of times, and I never do that because I rented this, so my phone was sitting charging next to me, and I was like, let me check Twitter. Oh no, what am I talking about? I'm not that guy. Like, I don't check my phone during a movie if I'm in the theater. Why would I ever think about picking up my phone? But if my phone rang, or if I wanted a snack, or if I had to go to the bathroom, I would not have been glued to the screen and ignored all of those other things. I would have gotten my snack. I would have gone to the bathroom. Her performance is stunning. It's deserving of an Oscar nomination. I'm happy for her. Charlize Theron, she's mesmerizing how she doesn't look like herself in that movie.
That's the makeup. I think that's her performance and the makeup, but the makeup's amazing. It better win. If it doesn't, then you can just give up.
It's unnerving. I stopped wanting to look at her. Not during the movie, but I was going to see Knives Out, like I said the other day, and Bombshell is being advertised as a poster, and I'm walking by it, and I found myself immediately not wanting to look at her because it's so unnerving how much she looks like Megyn Kelly, and she knocked it out of the park. I wasn't blown away by that movie, and I actually thought that the subject matter was important, so it was good to see that told, and I think it needed to be told, and I was more interested in how that unfolded versus a performance per se. Saoirse Ronan has my heart. We'll get there in just a second. Scarlett Johansson. I totally get what you're saying about Marriage Story. And it's so interesting because as soon as somebody says, no, it's sort of light blue, it's not completely dark blue, I can see the light blue now. So when you just said, oh, it's kind of just scene after scene after scene, like acting scene after acting scene, it's more of an actor's movie. I see what you're saying. I totally agree with you. But that scene in the beginning of the movie, after, spoiler alert for Marriage Story, although it's really not, because if your heart is not touched by it, even after hearing about it, I don't know. You need to open up because it's soul stirring what she does. It's interesting because by the end of the movie, I'm more impressed by him. And I would even venture to say, off the record, between you and me and all of the people who listen to our podcast, I'm on his side at the end of the movie. We can talk about that in the future after I see it again. Maybe I feel differently. I felt the same way after I saw it the second time, but that's besides the point. Okay, so he kind of like overtakes the movie for me at the end. So it's kind of hard for me to really see what she did. But there's a scene in the beginning of the movie after they do her last performance of the play that they're doing, because they're breaking up at that point. They're taking it to Broadway and somebody else is taking over the role. And he has his little notebook, Adam Driver. And she says to him, hey, you have a note for me? It's the last performance that she's going to do. The show is closing and reopening on Broadway with another cast. No one needs a note from the director on the last night after you've already had the cast party. Except for me, I would want it. I would want to hear what they had to say. And then it would drive me crazy the rest of my life that I couldn't do it. So she says, I know you can't sleep until you tell me. So go ahead and tell me. And she said, oh, it's about that scene. I know I can't cry on stage, but you said, don't force it. I didn't want to, or I don't want to force it. I didn't want to fake it. So I thought it would come. It didn't come. Oh, well. She's talking about acting in a play and supposedly having to cry in the scene, and she can't cry, and she accepts that this guy who's they're breaking up together, needs to tell her that. So she's that selfless that she allows him to, and then she turns the corner and breaks down. It's devastating. It is an Academy Award nominated moment, and it should be. So that said, Renee Zellweger will win. Saoirse Ronan, I would vote for, because there is something. And you know what? It just came to me the other day. I was looking at them all and I was like, yep, it's Saoirse Ronan. It's definitely Saoirse Ronan. I'm surprised by that. I would have thought it would be Scarlett Johansson. And I'm sorry, Scarlett, not that you'll ever hear this, but I kind of would vote for you. But my instinct went right to, I don't want to hurt her feelings, like she even cares about me. But something about Saoirse Ronan was just perfect. She was modernized, but yet still in the period piece. You said it right. That movie is a force of nature. Greta Gerwig is a force of nature, and Saoirse Ronan is a force of nature. There's not one moment you do not believe what she's doing, even in stuff that's supposed to be comical. Spoiler alert, when the book gets burned, when her novel that she's writing gets burned, even it has a comical tone to it, but she's so devastated. I was heartbroken for her. And without a wonderful crafted performance by a wonderful actress, I would have never felt that way. So Renee Zellweger will win, and I'm fine with it because I thought she was stunning, and I would vote for Saoirse Ronan.
All right, great. All right, now on to Best Director. I
feel much better about getting that out for some reason.
Best Director, we've got Bong Joon-ho for Parasite, Quentin Tarantino for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Martin Scorsese for The Irishman, Todd Phillips for Joker, and Sam Mendes for 1917. Okay, so I think that this is going to be somewhat of an upset. I think that Bong Joon-ho is going to win for director, and I think that's who should win. I know that Sam Mendes just won the DGA, but for some reason, I think that this is going to be like some sort of like a flag in the ground of like, this is the arrival of this film, of this auteur. And I know he's been an auteur for a while. I mean, he's made multiple films in Korea and in the United States, actually. But I think that this is going to happen. And he's up against some heavy hitters, Scorsese, Tarantino, and I think this is his time. I'm willing this to happen in real time. I'm putting this out into the universe because I think he deserves it, and I think that this is going to be it. I think that also partially, if he doesn't win for this, then that's going to be a missed opportunity. In some ways, I don't know if it's like a defeatist side of me. I feel like Bong Joon-ho is going to be chasing Parasite for the rest of his career. Now, maybe that's reductive of me and maybe that's short-sighted of me, but you've said it multiple times. I'm reticent to say it, but it's as close to a perfect film as I've seen. I'd stopped talking after that. So I was going to qualify it, but I can't qualify it.
I'm fascinated with your hesitation about it because
It's recency bias. It's
is
of course it's the shiny new thing. It's
is it though? Is it though? Is it? It's not. It's not.
Yeah,
So
okay.
is it because is it because you think there might be something else in your future that you'll see and you don't want to make a statement about it now, that, or is it just that it's so new to you?
I've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark probably hundreds of times. And every time I see it, I enjoy it, and I see something new. The movies on my top 10 movies of all, like my top 10 favorite movies of all time, like Doctor Strangelove. Every time I see Doctor Strangelove, I get the same feeling. Every time I see Big Lebowski, I get the same feeling. It's literally like eating, triple chocolate cake. It is that kind of a feeling. You feel guilty. You're like, I shouldn't be feeling this good doing this thing. It's got to be bad for me in some way. And that's the feeling I get when I watch Parasite. And maybe that makes me a weird person. I don't know, but
No, I completely understand what you're saying. I feel none of that. None of it.
yeah, I haven't seen it 100 times. So maybe talk to me next year and I will have seen it 100 times by then, probably.
Well, you just developed into a very good Catholic after doing all the two popes talks with all the guilt. But I just don't think, if chocolate cake is what you like and it's the best chocolate cake that you've ever had, there's any reason not to say it's the best chocolate cake I've ever had. It will be the best chocolate cake I've ever eaten. It's hard pressed for me to imagine something better. Now, I'm not going to go that far with Parasite on the record. Off the record, I might say that.
Yeah.
That said, here's where I think it's going to become interesting. Bong Joon-ho deserves Best Director, will win Best Director.
Ooh.
But I will not be surprised. And by the way, what I'm just saying, I'm not trying to take it back. I'm just saying there is this strange thing that is happening now where they're saying it's going to split votes. That one of these people who are front runners, and you keep saying Sam Mendes. Is it Sam Mendes or Sam Mendes?
I've listened to some interviews, and I think it's like a British thing.
Okay. Well, I'm not trying to sound like I'm correcting you because
Mendez as that's more of like a Spanish pronunciation of those letters together in that order. And I don't know if the British pronunciation is more like Mendes, but I don't know. Take a listen.
Let me just clarify something. Whenever I'm asking you, it's not as if I'm trying to tell you how it is, because I would never do that. I'm trying to figure it out myself, because you have heard him called Mendes, right? Sam Mendes, right?
Sure. Yeah.
You've heard that. Okay. So we'll go with Sam Mendes because I trust you and you have a really good ear. And so it's taken me a while to adjust to certain names. I just didn't know I would have to adjust to somebody who I've been saying that name for such a long time. That doesn't mean that it's not.
By the way,
hasn't been
it's
wrong.
Probably also Scarlett Johansson.
Oh my God.
It's hard. I
can't
always
do it.
forget.
I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. That's too much too soon in one podcast. I will catch up. I told you that in every play that I've done since I went back to acting, there's always one word that I can't really pronounce well. And there's always something that happens with that word, and it ends up to be a really great thing because now I've learned to lean into it, but there's always a word. And you said, I don't want to be reticent about something earlier on a few seconds ago. And I was like, reticent. That's the word I couldn't say in that one play. I was like, I had to look it up. I had to make sure I knew what it meant, but I leaned into it, man. So there's this thing out there that people are saying Sam Mendes is going to win Best Director and Parasite is going to win Best Picture, or Bong Joon-ho is going to win Best Director. That's what people are saying. And that Bong Joon-ho is going to win Best Director and 1917 is going to win Best Picture. The truth of the matter is, for me, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm fine with Parasite winning Best Picture and Sam Mendes making that movie. I loved it. And like I said, we can talk about it later on. Maybe not on this podcast, but maybe in the future, and maybe during Best Picture in just a few seconds. So he will be deserving, and he will have won his second Oscar in 25 years, which he's made incredible movies. Sam Mendes has made incredible movies. I've always enjoyed his films. I would like to see it Bong Joon-ho winning Best Director. That's what I wish for. But I will not be surprised if they split the vote. But like I said at the beginning of this podcast, every single Oscar that Parasite is nominated for, I believe it should win. And I don't think I've ever said that, ever. And I've been watching the Oscars for 40 plus years and really having an opinion about it in the last 25 years. And I don't think I've ever said that on the podcast in the last 5 or 6 years that we've been doing this. I've never been that definitive about a film. And it's not like I'm saying it just because I'm in love with that movie. I honestly believe it deserves original screenplay. I honestly believe it deserves production value or production design. I honestly believe it. So I'm sticking with Bong Joon-ho will win and should win, and that's who I would vote for. Like, that needed to be said.
All right. So
For
Best
real.
Picture, we've got Parasite, 1917, Ford versus Ferrari, Joker, Jojo Rabbit, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Little Women, Marriage Story, and The Irishman. So I was able to land the plane for this one. I did see 1917 last week. So I have officially seen all of the Best Picture nominees this year.
Awesome.
I think that 1917 will win, and I think that Parasite should win. I don't think that we could talk about 1917 if you want, but from a technical standpoint, I see the strings, and it took away from the emotional impact of the film for me. And there's something that, at least in my industry, I'm in television, and so I get excited about new technology, but we ultimately have to come back to the question of, why do you employ this new technology? Is it strictly for the purpose of employing the new technology, or is it to serve a purpose? In our case, it's usually to allow our on-air talent, like allow the people that are delivering the news to people, either to deliver the news in a more efficient manner, in a clearer manner, or in a more engaging manner, or to allow the people listening and watching to relate to our newscasters. So if it's not checking any of those boxes, then you probably shouldn't do it. And I think this was 1917 was an amazing technical exercise, and it's great that they can do it, but it really made me recognize and appreciate the art and the necessity of editing in film. And this movie is essentially a one shot, one take, single take, whatever, long take. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's supposed to be a real-time single take film. And that's really cool. And there's movies out there that do that. And it's awesome that we can do that nowadays, to be able to hide cuts. And obviously they didn't just do it in one, prolonged take, but they're able to, through digital trickery, hide certain cuts and CGI morph things together so that you can get different performances or adjust makeup or adjust lighting or things like that. But ultimately, the people who we're supposed to care about, I felt that I wasn't getting that connection to them. So that was my biggest issue with that. And I don't think that a movie like that should win Best Picture. So that's why I vote for Parasite.
Okay, so did you know about the one take thing going into
Yeah.
1917?
I did. Yeah.
I'm wondering how you would feel about it if you didn't know it. I'm wondering how you would feel about it, because I didn't know about it. And then about a half an hour into it, I was like, wait a second, wait, is this one take? And the idea of making a war picture that's one take in real time is a great concept to me. And it worked for me because I was already emotionally involved with the two guys. George McKay, I believe the actor's name is, the lead actor, Captain Fantastic. He's the oldest son in Captain Fantastic. I was already emotionally involved in the stakes of the movie. And so you had said something about it reminded you of a video game. And at first I was like, oh yeah, I get why he said that. Oh
Yeah.
no, I think that kind of just got me. I think that kind of took this experience away from me. And then I thought, that's exactly what dreams are like that happen in those circumstances when you're running and you're just missing something and you're just jumping over something and you're running under something and you're missing the bullets just by a split second. And it actually became a compliment for me that you said it was a video game, because the stakes were so high because it was relentless. It did not end until it ended. And for me, I thought it was a masterpiece. I thought it was really well done. There's something about it that just had my breath the whole time. It just was nonstop. So actually, this is the first time on this podcast that we're not completely almost 100% agreeing, which is usually our MO. But I mean, we kind of agree mostly, but not really. Everything you said about what you don't like about it is exactly what I loved about it. And maybe it's because I didn't know. I didn't know anything. That movie came out, I saw it the next day. That's unusual for me at this time of the year. I had said earlier during the nominations that I'd seen everything except for Harriet and something else at the time, Jojo Rabbit. And now, of course, I've seen all of it, but I'd seen 1917 before I got a chance to hear anything about it, know anything about it. And I'm not saying it would have influenced me, because that stuff usually doesn't influence me. It does. People's opinions about stuff I will take with a grain of salt. Unless I'm trying to understand why somebody loved something that I didn't love, I don't normally listen to a lot of critics or read a lot of critics, or I completely hated something or disliked something that everybody loved, or vice versa is what I'm trying to say. Then I'll read other people's opinions about it and I'll be like, oh, see, that person sees what I saw. So, okay, at least I'm validated in knowing that I'm just not like wonky. Other people saw that too. So maybe it's the thing about not knowing, but we'll never be able to tell because, you know, you've seen it already and so have I, and you knew when I didn't know. But I have to say this. So you're saying that Parasite is the one you would vote for, and 1917 will win. Yeah. Okay, so you're doing what everybody's doing now, that Bong Joon-ho is winning Best Director and 1917 is winning Best Picture. Interesting. I could see it happening. And I will say this. This is the first year in a long time that if any one of these films wins, I'll be okay with it. I don't have a problem with any of these other films winning. I just don't. I'm not the hugest fan of the Joker. I try to watch it a second time, and the truth of the matter is that I rented it from Redbox, and I sat on it for 3 days and paid for it for 3 days and couldn't watch it. I mean, what does that say? I don't know what that says. That's never happened to me before. I don't know if it's where I'm at in my life. I don't mean to disrespect this film, because I know, you know, lots of people love this movie. Lots of people saw stuff in it that I didn't see. And so I have to respect $1 billion worth of people going to see the film. I don't say that a money-making film is the reason why it should be Best Picture, but this has tapped into something that people have responded to. I just didn't respond the same way. So if for some reason it wins Best Picture, I might feel just a twinge of, oh, maybe not that one. Any other one, I'll be 100% okay with. Every one of the films on this list, it's a really great Best Picture list.
It's a good year for film. Yeah, I agree. 2019 was a great year for film.
It is. But I don't disagree with what you said might happen, but I can't say it any other way. I will start and end and say the same thing all the way through the podcast. Parasite will win, and I would vote for Parasite. And I will say this. We talked about this on the nomination show. I understand why people have a problem with the diversity in Hollywood not being what it is, where if they were making these movies, then these people could be nominated. And this year they made the movies and people could be nominated. It could be a much more diverse crowd of people. But like I said, these are the people who are nominated. So I can't spend much time talking about the Oscars, about what should have happened for whatever reason. That said, it will propel us into the future where these projects will get made. These female directors will be working. These people of different country and origin will be making films, and it will catapult other performances and other people into nominations into the future. That said, if Parasite wins Best Picture, it pretty much tramps it down. It pretty much stops it, because it is a foreign language film with actors. It doesn't matter that it's a South Korean film, although it does, but it really doesn't. It's a film with actors nobody knows their names. And so that could happen in America, that you could have an American film with people, Sam Jones instead of Song Gong-ho, and people's names that I'm still trying to learn how to pronounce. It wouldn't matter. We don't know who Sam Jones is. In a film of 10 other people that we don't know, it could be an American film. It's the fact that we don't know these actors and they have overtaken us with this story because their performances are stunning. Seeing it a second time, I could not get over how much everybody else's performance that I really saw the first time really stuck out the second, all the way down to the little boy. And I said on the podcast about Parasite that any one of them could have been nominated for the Oscar, and I stick to that. The Ghost, finger quotes, I just didn't. He could have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor. When I saw it a second time, I was like, God, that guy is good. And the mother, I saw it, but I didn't want, and even the daughter, it's amazing. So I don't think that a Best Picture should win because it would stop this diversity issue in its tracks, but it would. And this would be the picture to do it. And when we look back, we will be okay that 1917 won, but they will not say the same thing that they normally say. Well, this won, but this should have won. They're going to say 1917 deserved to win, but damn, Parasite was in that list. How do we talk about it? How do we say that should have won and something else should not have won? How do we talk about it? But it will be part of the conversation. But it won't be the same thing as like Saving Private Ryan and Shakespeare in Love. It won't be like that. Yeah. It won't be Brokeback Mountain and Crash. There's an obvious winner and an obvious shouldn't have won for most people in those 2 years. This year, people will be okay with 1917 winning. But man, the history will tell us something different. I'm telling you. I am telling you.
All right.
So
well,
there it is.
All right. That's it. So that's all of our picks. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on Sunday. And then we'll come back at it and figure out what they did wrong, because we know all the answers, of course. All right. Well, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com, and you can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer, and you can go to Twitter and you can tweet us at actorengineer, and we'll see you next time.